Buenas noches, good evening, magandang gabi po sa iyong lahat. Thank you so much for following us from home. Maraming salamat sa inyong pagsubaybay mula sa inyong mga bahay. Welcome to the Instituto Cervantes de Manila Cultural Webinars. Tonight, we are conducting the webinar in English with simultaneous translation into Spanish. So if you want to follow us in Spanish, you can choose that option. Esta noche vamos a seguir nuestro webinario en inglés, pero si quieren oírlo en español, seguirlo en español, pueden hacerlo eligiendo en la parte inferior de su pantalla, en el icono que tiene un pequeño globo terráqueo, la opción de español. Religion has been the cause or a pretext for conflicts between peoples. The creation of nations' identities is in many cases linked to religion, and in many instances needed to create narratives of alterity and confrontation as well. Contemporary societies are multi-ethnical, multicultural, and multi-religious as a consequence of post-colonialism and globalization. So interreligious dialogue is a concern not only for countries like the Philippines, but for everyone. To talk about interreligious dialogue, Muslims and Christians in the Philippines, we have invited two persons who both work tirelessly in favor of dialogue, peace, understanding between communities that have to live and work together. Ángel Calvo had a formation in philosophy, theology, and sociology. He's a Claretian priest. Nowadays, he's the president of Peace Advocates Zamboanga Foundation. The acronym is PATH, Peace in Spanish, and also of Zamboanga Basilan Integrated Development Alliance, among other many organizations. Almost 50 years already living in the Philippines. Everybody knows Father Ángel Calvo in Zamboanga, but I would say in the Philippines. He's already a living myth, I would say. Ángel, buenas noches, good evening. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Well, we pass to introduce our guest. Also, I have chosen starting by Father Ángel because he is living in the Philippines already more time even than the other guest. That is no less than Datu Mus Lidasan. He's the executive director of the Al-Kalam Institute of Islamic Identities and Dialogue in Southeast Asia, based at Ateneo de Davao University. He is also a member of the Parliament Bangsamoro Transition Authority. He was tightly involved in the preparations of the Bangsamoro Organic Law. Also, he was one of the independent directors of the Al-Amanah Islamic Investment Bank of the Philippines. He has more than 20 years of experience as a facilitator in intrafaith and interfaith dialogue for peace building in Mindanao. Datu Lidasan, Datu Mus Lidasan, welcome, and thank you very much for being tonight with us. How are you?
I'm doing good. Assalamu alaikum. Buenas noches, Dr. Javier. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be invited in your program, talking about interreligious dialogue.
Okay, thank you so much. Salam alaikum. Let's see if Ángel Calvo is already with us. Ángel?
Yes, I am here manipulating this, but can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly, perfectly. Go ahead, please.
Yes,
Salam
but
alaikum.
I cannot see myself. start the video. I don't know. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, we continue our program. Some months ago, the Archbishop of Rabat, the Spanish Salesian priest Cristobal López Romero, was named cardinal by the Pope Francis. In a big deal, this was a recognition of his work promoting understanding and affection between Muslims and Christians in Northern African countries. He's sending us his greetings from Morocco.
Un saludo muy cordial a todos los participantes de este encuentro sobre el diálogo interreligioso islamo-cristiano organizado por el Instituto Cervantes de Manila. Soy Cristobal López, sacerdote salesiano, arzobispo de Rabat, cardenal de la Iglesia Católica desde hace unos pocos meses. Les felicito por la organización de este encuentro sobre el diálogo interreligioso porque creo que es el camino para que las religiones, lejos de seguir siendo como ha sucedido en otros siglos, causa de problemas, empiecen a ser parte de la solución de los problemas que aquejan al mundo. De ahora en adelante, las religiones todas deben ser un instrumento de paz, un instrumento de construcción de un mundo justo y fraterno, y para ello es indispensable el diálogo. Saludo, por lo tanto, a todos los interesados en este tema y les aliento, les animo a continuar en el empeño, no solo en coloquios y en conferencias, sino en la vida de cada día, porque es allí, en la convivialidad, en la relación interpersonal, en la amistad, donde se fragua el diálogo entre musulmanes y cristianos, entre las diferentes religiones. Mucha suerte. Hasta pronto.
And it still is one more guest with us for the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation, ICID, assistance to the communities affected by conflicts related to religion is a priority. Actually, Bangsamoro region is a priority field of action for the Spanish Agency of Cooperation. With us tonight, also the head of the agency in the Philippines, Juan Pita. Buenas tardes, Juan. Can you give us an overall view of the ICID projects in Bangsamoro?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, congratulations for this initiative. We talk a lot about interreligious dialogue, and well, it is about discussing, about meeting, and so I think it's great that the Cervantes Institute has become also a place to continue the discussion and the debate and the interchange of ideas in this area. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some information of what we have been doing these years in the Philippines. The Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation, the Spanish Cooperation, has been working here for decades, for many years, and specifically in Mindanao. You may guess that there is cultural connection between Spain and the Philippines. There are many links between our societies, and we are always concerned of what's going on in one place or the other. That is in some way the origin of our cooperation. But we work in development. That means we work trying to understand what's going on with the people that are brought to poverty, to disasters. The international development cooperation is focused in trying to improve the situation of the people that are not included in the development of our societies. And that is done while people that continue suffering poverty and continue suffering violent conflicts, we can feel that we have achieved development as a whole in the world, in general in the world. The agencies, as the one of Spain, development cooperation agencies, are concerned with what we call the internet. That means now they are also called the global public goods. So that means health, that now with the pandemic, it's so clear. We are all concerned of what's going on in health issues all around the world. And we have to work it wherever it is. And we are also concerned, of course, in peace and stability. We are concerned in security, in peace and stability. And while there are conflicts in Mindanao, we are concerned and worried on those conflicts. And we want to contribute humbly, because we are far, but we are connected, as I said before, because of these cultural issues that we have a history, a common history. Spain was populated mostly by Muslims for several hundred years, and the Philippines was also governed by Spain and Christian governments for 100 years. So a shared history, and nowadays we are mixed societies. We always were, but now more clearly. Spain, of course, is a non-denominational government, state. It is a secular state. We have Christians, we have Muslims, we have many religions there. 4% of the population of Spain is Muslims. Sometimes it's not known here that there are many Spaniards that are Muslims now in Spain. And so we want to share our knowledge and our presence, and to know each other better, to, as I said before, humbly contribute to improve the situation. We have been working, we work from the development perspective. That's not so much a political perspective. Of course, Spain is concerned with the political process, with the peace process in Mindanao, but talking from the Development Cooperation Agency, we work in what we call peace building, not so much peace process, but peace building from a development perspective. That means giving opportunities to the people that are suffering the effects of the conflicts, and trying to contribute through development to a more peaceful environment. We strongly believe that talking, and specifically the Spanish cooperation, is strongly linked to the cultural issues of development. Sometimes we don't want to talk of those risky things in like religion, like politics. No, we think that's wrong. If we are talking about development, we have to talk about culture, we have to talk about religion, we have to talk about politics. That doesn't mean that we are going to enter into religious issues and political issues, of course, but we have to understand what's going on with the religious issues around and with political issues. We have to understand it so that we can properly work in development and peace building. We strongly believe that religion is not the origin of the conflict. It is not because of religion that the people fight. There are other interests of some leaders, of some portions of society that use religion and shape the religion to defend their interests. So that's why we have learned in Mindanao and with you, with the partners in Mindanao, that interreligion dialogue is easy. When we are talking with people deeply concerned with religion, it's easy. It is not difficult at all. The religions are focused in life, in protecting life. So they are easy to connect whenever you are talking about religion. It's more difficult to promote the intra-religious dialogue. The dialogue between the people within one faith that are using the religion to defend their interests, and the ones that are simply practicing the religion and that are not making a use of that religion. So yeah, that's something we have learned, and we are trying to contribute also, trying to promote the intra-religious dialogue, the dialogue between different ways of understanding the religion within the same religion. How are we working there? We are an official agency, so we work through the government. We work in partnership with the Philippine government first and with the regional government, in this case of Bangsamoro, and the local governments. And we work with the civil society in a net of partnerships. Within these years, we have been working, as I said, many years with institutions like Sabida, that is represented here by Father Calvo. We have also worked with Ateneo University, many opportunities, not exactly with Al-Kalam Institute, but yeah, we have had a good relationship with Al-Kalam Institute, and we have learned a lot from the knowledge that the Al-Kalam Institute has developed. And as those two examples, we are working with something like 15 or 20 partners within the Mindanao and specifically Bangsamoro. We are working in Zamboanga, we are working in Basilan, we are working in Maguindanao, we are working in Lanao del Sur, always trying to work with the most vulnerable people. We are working inside the camps of the Mayalef with the people that may have been suffering the most of the conflict, there are maybe some of the more isolated. We are working with indigenous people. We are working with women that are always victims in a very special manner of the conflicts. And we are working with mainly with local governments and trying to contribute in this public institutional development. Nowadays, we are working in focusing our work in this institutional development to contribute for the economic development in those very isolated marginal areas of Bangsamoro, but also in promoting the access of the state services to the people. And that mainly means justice. Transitional justice, that is an approach that we have where there is no justice. You need some ways, some shortcuts to approach some kind of justice to those victims that suffer so much. And that is what we do, helping and promoting and partnering with the people working in transitional justice in that area. And now for the future, in partnership with the EU, with the program Subatra, we are working, continue working, we are in what we have been doing, but continue working with more resources, jointly with the team Europe that we call, jointly with Europe, trying to promote more access to justice, that very difficult to understand multifaceted justice system of Bangsamoro, trying to promote the access to justice in Bangsamoro, trying to promote the human rights in the access to human rights, of course, also the economic, social, and cultural human rights, and trying to promote the access to justice specifically for women. We are signing now with the government of the Philippines, the Subatra. It has already been signed by the EU and the Department of Finance, and we are going to start to work very soon. We have had meetings even today about that, and we have 5 years ahead to work in access to justice and civil society in Bangsamoro. That is very rapidly some kind of summary of the point in which we are now working in Bangsamoro. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Juan. Now I want to ask to both of you, Datu Lidasan and Ángel Calvo, 5 questions. And more or less in 3 minutes, you can give us your insights about these questions. How is the current situation right now of the relationships between Christians and Muslims communities in the Philippines, but particularly in Mindanao and Basilan? Go ahead, Ángel, for instance.
Can you hear me?
Very good.
Okay.
Yes, Father.
I guess it must be very difficult to recapitulate 48 years in 3 minutes. But anyway, the question sounds very specific. The current situation. We cannot forget that the whole country has suffered a period of martial law, and Mindanao, a Muslim rebellion mainly political. But when we talk about rebellion, there is confrontation, social confrontation, in which the communities, the existing communities, the Muslim and the Christians, suffered the confrontation. Anyway, I can recall that for many years the initiatives throughout Mindanao promoting the relationship among the Christians and the Muslims. But for me, I recall it is not a point to go around the geography of Mindanao. But for me, what it was more important, the Dansalang College, the Bishop Tutud, breaking walls in Marawing, the Oblates in Cotabato and in Jolo, the Bishop Dion, the Bishop Sulama Forum, and Duyun Ramadan, even the CRS, the Catholic Relief Services, and what we started here in Zamboanga, the Mindanao Week of Peace. It has developed a lot of initiatives, the sensitivity, the respect, and the sympathy among the Muslim and the Christian communities. If you ask me, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, it is a necessary political solution. But what happened in Jolo, in which the most radical Abu Sayyaf continues kidnapping and killing soldiers. What happened there?
Datu Lidasan.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Father Ángel. The recent relationship of the Christians and Muslims in Mindanao, for me, have improved compared to the past years. As what Father Angel mentioned, during the martial law period, there was different groups like the Black Shirts and the Ilaga. These are Muslim Christians, and fighting over land, over access to resources. And but prior to the martial law, we could say that it was also relatively peaceful. The Muslims and the IPs, indigenous peoples, welcomed the Christian settlers from Luzon and Visayas and Mindanao. The Catholic schools and universities started to open up here in Mindanao, and they educated us. I myself is a product of a Catholic school from elementary to high school, and now I'm working in a Catholic Jesuit Filipino university. So right now, the passage of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region Muslim Mindanao, the Bangsamoro Organic Law, was mainly a contribution of the Christian majority in the Philippines. In the Philippines, we can say that more than 80% of the population are Christians, and the Muslims is a minority. But in the BARM, in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, it's the Christians are a minority, and there are still some issues of conflict, as what Father Angel mentioned, especially the Abu Sayyaf. In fact, there are other extremist groups as well, the Dawla Islamiyya, the Bangsamoro Islamic Freedom Fighters. But these are within the Muslim communities. These are a minority group who espouse certain ideologies. They espouse looking at Islam as a political ideology to advance their political interest. But still, we continue our work in interreligious dialogue, and we're happy to say that even here in Cotabato City, where it's part of the BARM, Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, and the Muslims and Christians are almost 50-50, 50% Muslim, 50% Christians, but they work together and giving space in order to develop our communities.
Thank you. And how do you see the future? Or in other words, what should we do to prepare the future for the next generations in order that religion wouldn't be a problem? What are you working on? Which kind of projects are you working now with, or what do you have in mind for that?
I answer.
Go ahead.
Within the confrontation I mentioned a while ago, the leaders who are interested from both religion have to meet and analyze what we call the common ground. The common ground, as we did 20 years ago, we found out that the common ground were two elements, the faith in a living God, and that God in whom we believe are willing to see us growing in peace. These are the two elements in the common ground. The process is different. It constant the three elements. Number one, the encounter. We have to meet each other. We have been separated for years or centuries in confrontation. We have to come to become friends in the regular meetings, and even especially on celebrations. And there are so many celebrations that we are far apart. The Eid al-Fitr, the Ramadan, we organize an iftar. We sponsor the iftar in one of the Muslim communities, and etc. The solidarity, Christmas, we have to become friends. And the second point is learning from each other. The most problem in the confrontation it has been ignorance. This is why we believe that every religion has, it is cultivating their values, and we have to enrich each other and to know their values. This is why we are in our meetings, everybody talks about the meaning of the pilgrimage to Mecca, the meaning of fasting, the meaning of Advent, the meaning of Christmas, etc., etc. And the third point of the process is acting together. Acting together for justice and peace. This is why there are many statements in the COVID, the recent statement of our interreligious solidarity for peace, and in COVID-19, the week of peace, the Ramadan, etc., etc. I believe that the poor, as Juan said a while ago, the poor people are the encountering point of interreligious dialogue. This is why our movement is called Interreligious Solidarity for Peace.
Lidasan?
Yes, we see the need for peace education, and that's why one of the projects of the Al-Qalam Institute was peace manuals. We had a project supported by the U.S. Embassy a few years ago. This peace manual will hopefully be incorporated in the NSTP submitted to the CHED, Commission on Higher Education. You need to educate our young people, Muslims and Christians, and looking at the similarities of religion. And aside from that, we also encourage the different communities to dialogue in action. We have a community here in Cotabato City. They call themselves the Christian Muslim Association. They are fisher folks. In fact, we just distributed some projects assisting them. And this community really shows a very good example of how Muslims and Christians living together in one community in a particular barangay in the city, having projects on fish ponds, and right now they are into fish deboning of a bangus, no? And they serve the local market, the local hotels here. In fact, because of the pandemic, the demand for their products has increased. And here we can see that dialogue is not just happening inside the classroom, where we talk about religion, but these are ways where dialogue happens in action, where communities share the same meal, as what Father Angel mentioned, the Duyug Ramadan, where we invite our Christian friends, classmates to join us. And they also invite us into celebrating Christmas. So, as a product of a Catholic school, I also see the need for finding the commonality. You know? In Ateneo de Davao, we advocate for the document we call Human Fraternity. It's a document that was signed by the Imam of the Al-Azhar University and Pope Francis. Here, the document merely says that we all have freedom, but our freedom must also recognize our diversity and respect human dignity. And as what Sir Pita mentioned, it's true. No? We have to discuss not only religious matters, but even socio-cultural and even political issues. And here, we bring the essence of dialogue into a more concrete things. In the recent pandemic, we distributed relief assistance, and here we joined forces with Christians and Muslims, and we made sure that in the Muslim communities, we give them food that are halal, that are safe for them. No? We make sure that there is no haram ingredients. And in the Christians community, although this is a project of BARB, we make sure also that they get the relief assistance during the lockdown. And we do this in the mosque, we do this in the different parishes.
Okay, tell us now a little bit about your personal experience. Well, I know, as Father Calvo mentioned, it's very difficult, almost impossible, not to resume whole life in just a couple of sentences. But what would you highlight as a human experience, the human touch of your activity in this field?
My first encounter with the real Muslim community was in Basilan a long time ago, 1972. We came to Basilan well prepared. I think the good sound theology after the Vatican Council. But the first moment were in Basilan were excellent, no? Excellent. We had a tour from Basilan by the Sultan of the Yakans, etc. But the first year, 72, it was martial law. The MNLF, the burning of Jolo, the rebellion, we had witnessed the violent, the rebellion, insecurity. This is why they question us, our own presence. What are we doing here? We came thinking that we came to Basilan to unite the people and bring harmony with the people. But they question us. This is why we had to analyze our presence and our mission. We found out that our institutions for the Muslim communities, our education was for the Muslim community, our social action was for them. And we question ourselves, what about with the Muslim community? This is why we try to understand the bishops of Asia had developed pedagogy, theology of harmony with the self, harmony with the community, harmony with the nature, harmony with God. This is very rich, the theology of the Bishop of Asia. This is why we tried, myself and the other Clarician, when with the Muslim community, living with, this is the experience of Kapatagan. For me, the richest experience I had in my life, missionary life. And we followed the pedagogy of the oppressed of Paulo Freire. In his book, he dedicated one whole chapter to dialogue. This is secular Paulo Freire for dialogue. You know how it made an impression on us, how he defined dialogue, to treat others as subjects, not as objects. This is why we started the Kapatagan experience with living with Muslim communities, etc., etc. But this is how it became the whole process until I was advised to leave Basilan, and I am here in Zamboanga because of the kidnapping of the Abu Sayyaf, anyway.
And that Lidasan, working for peace, working for dialogue, how has influenced your life as a human being?
It influenced me very deeply. In fact, my journey in the peace process, in the Bangsamoro peace process, were very meaningful with the different Catholic institutions like Ateneo de Davao, the SEAP, Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines, because they invited me in their homes, they invited me in their universities to talk about Islam, to talk about the history of the Bangsamoro people in Mindanao. It was very enriching for me as well, especially educated in a Catholic school, because it didn't diminish, or it didn't made me, it didn't converted me into Christianity, but it even strengthened my faith, because there is respect, there is tolerance, there is acceptance. So the creation of the Al-Kalam Institute last 2011 is very important in the peace process as well, because we work in terms of working with different NGOs, government line agencies in understanding the Bangsamoro, understanding the Muslims in Mindanao and the history of the Muslims. Because in the past, it's very seldom that you can find the history of the the Muslims. We have been depicted all through the years as the enemy, as the barbarians, as the pirates. But recent recent historical findings and research have showed that it's not like that. It's a history that may be interpreted by different groups. In Ateneo, because of Al-Kalam, we have the AB Islamic Studies. It's open for Muslims and non-Muslims to study Islamic studies. And I think one of our participants here in this conference is the coordinator of that department in Ateneo. His name is Ustad Upun. And in our institute also, in Al-Kalam, we are mixed. There are Muslim staff, there are Christian staff, and we work in development, and we don't see our religion as a hindrance in developing and giving our services to our people.
Ángel, you mentioned a while ago that the root or the source of conflict is the ignorance, actually not to know the other. And Muslims and Christians have a lot in common. What do they have in common, and what separates them?
In that question, I'm sorry. In that question, I have to make a confession. I am trained as a Christian and theology as a Christian tradition. But after the experience of Basilan, the experience of Kapatagan, I had to read, research a lot of books. I found one book especially focused into that question. Muslim nation, the Ummah, and the Christian church exploring the mission of the two communities. This is why I have to read and research all these books. Both Christian and Muslim are committed by the Word of God. Both are witness. Muslim, the Word of God, are committed to the Word of God revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. And the Christians are committed by the Word of God became flesh in the person of Jesus Christ. All of them, all the Muslims and the Christians are committed to the Word of God. If you ask me, I am not more familiar with the Christian faith, Christian tradition, but for me, faith means three simplified 3 points. The tradition, the historical events, the revelation, the Old Testament and the New Testament for us. The second, the confidence, the new creation in heavens. And the third point, the mode of living, abiding in the present. If you are good to God and to your neighbor, if you behave well, you go to heaven. This is why the two communities have a lot of similarities have in common. What separates us, I do not know the Trinity, Jesus, the Son of God. This is sound for them. This is very strange. But the letter of the common word among us, the letter to from the Muslim leaders to the Christian leaders, is based in the love of God and the love of neighbor, which is a gospel attitude.
Okay, Datu, Lidasan, what can you add to what Father Ángel has said us?
Yes,
Datu, Lidasan, go ahead, please.
we make sure that our communities understand. My background is anthropology, so it's more of looking at how to properly communicate and understand the culture of the people, and in our way of encouraging dialogue, as I mentioned, the common it's actually it's a common word. No? The commonalities of the three religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, is 2 points: the love of God and the love of neighbor. These two is very important in a religion, because a Muslim cannot be a Muslim if he or she doesn't love God, and he or she doesn't love their neighbor. And it's important to help one another. And in one of our programs, where we do a bloodletting, bloodletting activity, where we invite Muslims and Christians to donate their blood. And that gesture is very symbolic, because a Muslim blood can be given to a Christian or a Catholic person. There is no difference. Our human body, our biological setup, physiological setup is common to everybody. And once people understand that our interpretations of the divine, somehow that's makes us different because of historical experiences, and we need to understand that in context. And I think education and exposure, the more that we expose people in the community, instead of siloing, instead of isolating ourselves, not interacting, and there we can find a lot of common activities. I think last thing I can add to this is, even in sports, no? In one community we introduce basketball league. It's a fun game. It's not for competition, but there it provided people a venue for interaction, a venue for sharing a meal, and that started with a simple hi, hello, assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, and then the relationships have been built. The relationships is becoming personal, and people knows one another, and that's where we can find the commonalities.
Okay, thank you. It seems there are some problems with the connection. I would like to say to all our friends that are watching this seminar that you can answer through this bar that you have at the bottom of your screen in questions and answers. So you can write the question, and we will transmit to our guests tonight. Well, the last question, well, is somehow personal. I was a little bit surprised when coming to the Philippines and listening the word moro without any negative connotation. Well, I've been living in some Muslim countries where actually to say moro, well, sometimes I don't dare, no? Well, it doesn't mean that moro is fully negative. In Spain, for instance, we have this feast, moros y cristianos, very popular, and mostly the children prefer to have the disguise of moro than the disguise of cristiano. And also their expression, as we say to a partner, we say, you are my reina mora, no? Reina mora, between lovers, no? It's a sort of nice word, no? So it's not always a negative connotation, But what I see in the Philippines, well, is Bangsamoro, no? So I find that very interesting, and I find that Filipinos are wonderful to take words or concepts that come from abroad, to shift them, and to give it a positive connotation, no? Like, I don't know, even with the gastronomy, you know, this Canton Pancit, for instance, is not from Canton, or I don't know, but actually something very, very good, and probably much better than the dish that came from China. With the Spanish cuisine, we have also things like that. Well, what can you tell us about the term moro? About the term moro, how you feel that? People from Bangsamoro, how do you feel about the term moro?
I am Javier. I am as confused as you. Anyway, I have been educated in Granada, in the Alhambra, and here I come to Zamboanga. They call dish morisqueta. Morisqueta. Anyway, it sounds for me the Moro word in the Mindanao, but later on, the recent time, it has been an identity. It was by the Spaniards, the Moros, but has come an identity, the Moro province, the Moro land, the Moro National Liberation Front, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. I reflected upon the Moro, and it came like the Negro, the negritude, the Negro, and as an identity, an identity for the Moro province, the Moro National Liberation Front. But it is better than Moose, who is from Mindanao, explain that.
Yes, the Moro before, it was used as a derogatory. When you say Moro, or in the local dialect, they call muklo. It's an insult. It tells us that the person is untrustworthy, different negative connotations. But because of the emergence of the Moro struggle, it somehow became a political identity showing the Muslims' resistance of the Spanish colonization. In fact, in Mindanao, in central Mindanao and south central Mindanao, it really resisted the Spanish influence, although the sultans at some point, they made treaties in the past. Right now, it is an evolving identity, like the Bangsamoro. At one point, people doesn't want to be called as Moro. They will really fight you. They will not allow you to call them as Moro. But right now, the Bangsamoro is an identity that's evolving. And for me, I think it has a bright future because the BARM right now, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, calls for reform, calls for moral governance. And by example, our leadership with the MILF are trying their best to be models for a new image of the Moro.
Okay, I think that you, Ángel and Mus, you can read the questions from the public. You can open. There is a question addressed to Father Ángel, a very particular question. But in the meantime, you read that, Ángel. I will read the question. Interesting question from someone, Nolan Vedat Dangaso, says, although conversion to the other religion is not the goal to this interreligious dialogue, of course it's not the goal, not at all. Are there situations where Christians get converted to Muslim, or Muslim get converted to Christianity? Well, I think so, but what can you tell us about that?
My experience near the 50 years, at the beginning, they were some Muslim living with the territory and the community of Christians. They became Christians. Now, the opposite. More of them become Muslim now. This is why it depends. It depends on the community they are living in. No? If they are married, a Muslim and a Christian, if they plan to live together in a Muslim community, they become Muslim. And they are planning to live in a Christian community, they become Christian. But this is practically irrelevant now, irrelevant for me.
Yes, I agree with Father Angel. It's more of a personal choice, and in Islam we respect whatever the religion of the person is.
Yeah, it's now. I don't know, Ángel, if you read the question addressed to you. Well.
Oh,
no.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I am reading that question. Ambassador, ¿no? El embajador, ¿no? ¿Cómo está situation in Zamboanga? ¿Cómo está la situación de COVID in Zamboanga? It is increasing. We have been several months, 3 or 4 months in close and quarantine, but they are increasing, and is closing from Basilan, from Jolo, closing from the provinces, neighboring provinces, etc., etc. But in Basilan, how is the situation in Basilan? I say the same. At the moment, the city of Zamboanga has a statement and resolution not to come to Basilan, to Zamboanga from Basilan. This is enclosed.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that I'm envious of the ambassador, because he was lucky to visit Basilan. Yeah. When I was there in Zamboanga last time, Ángel, you remember, I couldn't make it, but I was, and I hope after COVID.
Together with Juan, Juan
yeah, Juan, of course, is very, very lucky, the most lucky of all of us, because he goes very, very often to Mindanao. I would love to go there more often. Well, to finish, is another question about the role of the youth. The role of the youth in this intercultural, interfaith dialogue. This is the last question, and then we will have Juan Pita again to give us headlines as a sort of conclusion. But first of all, the role of the youth. Datu or Ángel?
The role of the youth is very crucial. No? In fact, one of our programs in Alcalan is the Salam movement. It's a movement of Muslim, Christians, and indigenous peoples working together for peace and harmony. They have created different chapters in the different islands of Mindanao. And there we introduce the peace education. And we believe that, as what Sir Rizal, no? Our national hero, said, that the youth is the future. No? But actually, it's not just the future, but the youth is actually very active now. It's no longer the future, but the youth are main actors right now, and they are actors of change. So if we can convince the youth that interreligious dialogue is important, then we can have a better community.
Very good, Mus. We have the intervention for the youth. The youth solidarity for the peace. We have also high school, producing high school curricula for the integration of the peace education to any curricula. And then we celebrate the Peace Camp for children, for youth, and we give the Peace Weaver Award to the youth. This is very important in the movement, in the past solidarity movement. The youth is very, very important.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, Juan, please give us in a couple of headlines as a conclusion of this very interesting discussion.
Well, difficult. A couple of is difficult because there have been many issues. But let me remark some elements that I have taken from the interventions. One, at the starting point, it was mentioned the importance of the long-term effort. That I think that is key. We are talking about something that is not going to be solved and happen soon. It has been, it's a process, a very, very long process that comes from generations. And we have to be aware of this approach. Yeah, that's very important. One very important piece of information from Lidasan, 50-50 in several areas of Mindanao. So we are not talking about predominant community or another. We are talking about something that should get together, because it's 50-50, something like gender, that we are 50 people women and 50 people men. No? So it is not an issue of choosing, it's an issue we have to get it together. And go to the common ground and to act together. I think that is key. No? Act together, work together in a common ground. Through education, key, of course. I think we all agree on that. No, education is how to educate is another issue. You know, how to, but it was mentioned also living together and trying to live together and to proceed with education jointly with Muslims and Christians. I think that is very, very important. Well, living together is the way to get a culture of peace. There is a difference of two different cultures of peace, because not all the pieces are the same. No? You can have a peace imposed by the force, by the army, by the security forces. That is what the Romans call the Pax Romana, the peace imposed by force, the calm. Or you have the Greek concept of peace. That is, the Greek call it Irene. No, is the name Irene comes from there. Irene means the peace built by the habit of living together. It's not the same. Of course, it's always mixed. And maybe you always need both of them in some way, in some portions. But this issue of living together through this anthropological approach, I like very much this mention of considering it as an anthropological issue. I think that has to do with man, no, and the knowledge of men and how to work together to improve the situation of the men through this education, deep education. The mention to Paulo Freire, for those who work in development, Paulo Freire is a very, very important reference. Is the origin of so many modern elements of the, because some people think that he's an old guy, you know, from old times, but what we call the theory of change, that is the most recent movement in development theories. The theory of change is deeply rooted in Paulo Freire. And so this experience that has been practiced in Mindanao through the education concepts of Paulo Freire, I think very, very important element to be taken into account for the future, because I'm not sure if we are taking into account this richness of different cultures of education that came from the past. The role of history, that is also very important. history. You can use history, you can use and abuse history for whatever you want. So I think it's very, very important to make a good use of history, trying to acknowledge what happened, to know what happened, and to rescue the lessons learned in a positive way for the future, not denying the truth, never, acknowledging it, and at the same time using it to learn, to build a common understanding and not the opposite. The connection of the common background of religions, that's obvious, no? It has been mentioned. The Jews, the Muslims, and the Christians are in enormous percentage the same kind of approach to understanding religions, and that is what should be, of course, taken into account. And yes, the youth that comes again through the generational issue. You know, this is a long-term effort, so the sport, very, very important. Play together, joy the life together. The young people have the most contact as possible between the people. And nowadays, the ambassador mentioned the COVID. I think that's very important to take into account, because we are in a very, very difficult moment for the world, for the country. And well, here we have a challenge. No? How in the COVID times, how can we promote not the social distance, but the opposite? Well, we don't need social distance, we need exactly the opposite. So how can we try to overcome this situation of COVID and trying to promote a youth that can do it better than we have done? That is always the aim. No? They have to improve our performance, the next generation. And we are not sure of that. And I think that we should say that. Because sometimes it's, oh, the youth will solve the world. No, the things could go in the wrong way. We have seen that. So it's not to be passive and wait. It's to work with the youth, because it is key. We can go in the wrong way or in the right way. We can go promoting this culture of living together or promoting the culture of war. What will be in the future? The reality of Mindanao is something that is a choice. It's a choice of the Mindanao society, of the Philippine society, and of course with the participation of the international society that we are all concerned about. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juan. We are running out of time already. Everything comes to an end. There are some more questions our guests can answer to you out of the program. But anyhow, if you don't receive their answers, you can write again in our Facebook page, and we will guarantee that you will have your answer. Well, thank you very much indeed to Ángel Calvo. We will interview you when the next 50 years in the Philippines. So, and that too is.
I am writing a book in English and Spanish.
Spanish.
And
Very good. Datu Lidasan, it's always a pleasure to see you, to work with you now. And I hope we will have you again and again in Instituto Cervantes with programs like this. And thank you so much, Juan. And well, we are a little bit sad because you are leaving the Philippines, not because you like, but because life is like that. And we cannot be more than 5 years in the same country. We are like the joggers. We have an expiration date always that we come. Thank you, Juan is someone that really loves the Philippines, as many Spaniards, as Ángel, as myself, as many of us. And he has a deep knowledge of Philippine culture, no? So it's a pity, but you will be always available, I presume, to consult you things and always in touch with us, with the Philippines. Thank you so much. And don't forget, tomorrow we have another appointment. It's not us who organize, but this Intramuros administration is organizing a webinar at 3 p.m. on our activity, the exhibit, the tribute to Betsy Westendorf, another Spaniard that came to the Philippines and became Filipina. And don't forget, the weekends, we have cinema, we have classics, Spanish classics, and with also webinars every Sunday conducted by our friend Jessica Zafra. Thank you very much to all of you. Muchas gracias. Maramin, salamat po. Shukran, besef.